Hello, everyone. We are so excited for you to be here with us today. We cannot wait to dive into this co-taught lesson with the team from Your Voice is Power as we continue the conversation of music, social justice, and coding. This is part 2 of our Breakbeat Code music and coding series. So if you were here for the first lesson with us, we are so excited that you're back. And if this is your first lesson, welcome. We've got so much in store for you today. I am Emily Fitzpatrick. I am one of the co-founders here at the Cobblestone Collective, and I'm joining you today from Treaty 3 territory in Arthur, Ontario. Now, before we dive into anything, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the lands that I'm joining from, and those lands are covered with the Between the Lakes Treaty 3, which actually covers over 3 million acres of land, which is a huge, large amount. This treaty was between the Crown and the Mississaugas, and it's also home to so many other communities, including the Petun, the Anishinaabe, the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, Ottawa, and Mississauga. And I know that we are a national community gathered here today from all over Canada, and you're probably participating today from a different treaty and different area, as well as home to different communities. So if you're a settler on these lands, I encourage you to learn more. 2 of my favorite places to do so are native-land.ca or an app called Whose Land. And I think we're going to have opportunity today to explore this even more. Before I bring our guest speakers out, I want to go over a little bit of housekeeping. Now, if you've joined us before, you're very familiar with this, that we can't hear or see you, but you can hear and see us. So the way that we're going to communicate is through a form. So if you're on your devices or teachers, this is where you can go ahead and open up a brand new tab in your internet browser and go to thecc.page/answers. And there you'll find a form with just 2 questions. The first one is, what's your name? Remember, only use your first name. We're going to keep digitally safe today. Or you can use your teacher's name, or teachers, if you're filling this out, you can go Miss Fitzpatrick's class or Mr. Smith's class. And the second question is, well, what's your answer? And that's where we're going to be able to ask you questions throughout this 60-minute live lesson, and you can share your answers with us. One to get started is, where are you joining from today? And currently, what is your favorite song? So go give that form a try by filling in those 2 pieces of information. And while you're doing that, I am so excited to bring 2 individuals out to join us. We have Christine and Marika here to join us today. Hello.
Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. We are joining you today from Treaty 1 territory, the land of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dene, and Dakota people, as well as the homeland of the Red River Métis Nation. Welcome to Your Voices Power, Music, Social Justice Coding, What's the Connection, Co-Taught Lesson Part 2.
Whoa. All right, ladies, I'm going to pop off into the background. Have a fabulous lesson with so many classes here today.
Awesome. So yeah, like Marika said, we're so excited that you're joining us here today. We're going to spend a couple moments introducing ourselves. My name is Christine Malott, and I'm an Indigenous high school teacher, curriculum developer, and hip hop enthusiast. I feel very fortunate to be able to combine my passions of music, literature, and technology to help co-create this amazing program that I know I would have loved to have participated in when I was in high school. And I can't wait to tell you more about it.
Bonjour, everyone. My name is Marika Shala, and I just introduced myself in my Ojibwe language. I said my spirit name is White Cloud Woman. I'm a teacher, workshop facilitator, curriculum developer, and mother from Winnipeg, Manitoba. I helped with some of the creation and development of some of the curriculum and modules for the Your Voices Power program. I currently teach grade 1-2 in Winnipeg's inner city, and I'm so excited to be here today with you all. So to begin, next slide, please. We're going to start with a little bit of a land acknowledgement. So again, we're here on Treaty 1 territory in Winnipeg, Manitoba. It is the land of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Oji-Cree, Dene, and Red River Métis people. So to begin, I want you to reflect on this question. How are music, computer science, activism, and entrepreneurship pathways to promote racial equity? The Your Voices Power program is designed to help students to tackle this overarching theme of racial equity through hip-hop music and coding. But why study hip-hop? Hip-hop is a literary art form that has the highest level of vocabulary and lyrical density of any music genre, as rappers pride themselves in coming up with the complex rhyme schemes over the hottest beats. Through learning coding, students will improve their computer skills while also developing their creativity, problem-solving, communication, and collaboration skills. In addition to this, through the program, students learn about the history of hip-hop as the chronicle of the socio-political issues faced by BIPOC youth, while relating these struggles to the injustices faced by Indigenous communities here in Canada. So next we'll play the program introduction video for you all.
The Your Voices Power contest will launch in early 2022 and will provide middle and high school students with the opportunity to learn about coding and social justice through music. EarSketch is the coding software created by Georgia Tech University that allows students to turn code into music, along with beats and loops provided by artists like us.
On déconstruit une chanson pour pouvoir en créer une nouvelle. Donc je pense que c'est la plus belle expérience qu'on peut faire avec une chanson déjà existante.
I think learning to code is really important these days, especially for young Indigenous people to get involved with the technology that is continuing to advance in today's society.
Hip-hop is a celebration of culture, energy, intellect, self-expression, and survival. Hip-hop teaches us that our voice is power.
You might not be aware of the light and how bright you are, but you have to know that you are capable of inspiring other people.
Maintenant, il est temps d'utiliser cette voix à travers la musique et le codage. Alors, êtes-vous prêts?
The time is now to create your remix. Let go of your inhibitions, don't be afraid to share your voice, and write from the heart.
Vous êtes un programmeur. Faites des rythmes, apprenez le codage, promouvoir l'équité.
And I can't wait to hear what you come up with.
All right, so throughout our workshop today, we've taken bits and pieces from each of the 8 modules that are available in full for free online at www.yourvoicespower.ca. And so we're really going to guide you through what the competition is all about. We'll talk about the competition requirements at the end, as well as play you the successful winner of last year's competition. So I'm going to start by giving you a brief history of the Canadian context in terms of Canadian and Indigenous relations. So like many places all over the world, colonization, of course, did happen in Canada. And colonization is defined as the action or process of settling among and establishing control of an Indigenous population. And we see this happen in places like, of course, North America, Australia, New Zealand, and even Brazil. So a different method of colonization happened in Africa. This is often referred to as imperialism, where there was foreign government interference in different countries in Africa, as well as the transatlantic slave trade. So I'm going to be talking a little bit about how this process happened in Canada. And so prior to colonization, on my next slide, you can see that there are many distinct nations living in what we refer to as Turtle Island or North America. And each nation had its own history, language, cultures, traditions, and ceremonies. These nations also had complex relationships amongst each other and often engaged in a treaty-making process, which were both political and economic agreements amongst themselves. Then we have, on my next slide, this is first contact. And this is when the relationship between Indigenous nations and settlers was one of collaboration. So we saw a lot of collaboration through the fur trade, So Indigenous nations at this time were regarded as distinct and autonomous political units, as well as they were regarded as being necessary for the survival of the settlers. So Indigenous nations allied themselves with different European nations and taught settlers how to survive in the harsh winters, as well as the best trade routes. At this stage, we see peace and friendship treaties being formed, and Indigenous nations also fought in wars over territory and helped develop the newly created country of Canada. Then on my next slide, we see a more prominent shift in the relationship between Indigenous and non-Indigenous groups. A shift in population occurred with an influx of settlers and a sharp decline in Indigenous populations for many reasons, including being affected by disease and starvation. So at this point, non-Indigenous nations developed both the will and the capacity to impose their beliefs on the remaining Indigenous population, who were considered to be backwards or at the back of evolution. And this was a really paternalistic outlook, and it established that Indigenous people needed to be protected or guided and forced to catch up to what they referred to as Western standards of civilization. And so Indigenous peoples were displaced from their traditional territories and put onto reserve land by way of treaties and forced into a role of like a domestic dependent nation in which they were forced to rely on the Canadian government for sustenance because they were not able to hunt and trade in the same way that they were prior to this all happening. One of the major tools of colonization was the Indian Act, and it was through the Indian Act that the residential school system occurred. And so attendance at residential schools was made compulsory during this time, and it lasted for about 150 years. And the policy was to remove children from the influence of their families and put them into boarding schools in order to assimilate them into Canadian culture. So Indigenous children were punished for speaking their language and were taught to essentially hate themselves. Over 150,000 children attended these church-run, government-sponsored residential schools, and thousands of children were abused physically, emotionally, spiritually, sexually. The residential school system impacted up to 7 generations of Indigenous families. And so they say about over 10,000 children died at these residential schools, and often families were not even given an explanation as to how they died or even given their bodies back for a proper Indigenous, like traditional funeral. And so death was so prevalent at these schools that the schools had graveyards and rather than having playgrounds. And it wasn't until the 1990s that Indigenous people started to talk about their experiences at residential school. In 2001, a class action lawsuit was brought against the Canadian government for the treatment of children at these so-called schools. And if these abuse claims would have been taken individually, they could have bankrupted the Canadian government. So instead of that happening, in 2006, the Canadian government decided to engage in a process called Truth and Reconciliation that Marika is going to tell you more about.
So after the legacy of residential schools and the ongoing cultural genocide to Indigenous people, something needed to be done. In June of 2008, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada was created through a legal settlement between residential school survivors, the Assembly of First Nations, Inuit representatives, and the parties responsible for the creation and operation of the schools, the federal government, and the church bodies. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission, also known as the TRC's mandate, was to inform all Canadians about what happened in residential schools. The TRC traveled to communities across Canada and documented the truth of the survivors, their families, communities, and anyone personally affected by the legacy of residential schools. This included First Nations, Métis, and Inuit former residential school students, their families, the churches, former school employees, government officials, and other Canadians. With the stories, the TRC created 94 calls to action. The 94 calls to action are actionable policies and recommendations that are meant to aid in the healing process of the legacy of residential schools. Through acknowledging the full history of the residential school systems, also known as the truth, and actions that can create new systems to prevent such atrocities from ever occurring again and restore the broken relationships between Indigenous peoples. Reconciliation. These 94 calls to action call upon different levels of government, education, justice, healthcare, child welfare, and many more to implement them in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. Your Voices Power is dedicated to the TRC's call to action and teaches on topics that teach truth, such as residential schools, the 60 Scoop, as well as topics that teach reconciliation, such as Indigenous song, music, dance, and the 94 calls to action themselves. The 94 calls to action can be read online and can be accessed by anyone, and there are resources out there that even outline each call to action in child-friendly language, thanks to the First Nations Caring Society mascot Spirit Bear. So we've talked a bit about the history of Indigenous social justice issues here in Canada, and what are some ways that we can enact them in schools. So there are 3 different systems at power here: decolonizing education, indigenizing education, and education for reconciliation. Decolonizing education places more emphasis on the power relationships within education and serves to deconstruct past colonial systems of education and recreate new ones, usually based on equity and Indigenous principles. Indigenizing education and spaces usually refers to the integration of Indigenous content, understandings, true histories, and processes into the formal education system. This includes curriculum development, lesson planning, school culture, school and classroom activities, and more. Indigenizing education means to change our mindsets from a Western colonial way of teaching and to include a more holistic traditional means of learning. Indigenizing education means to learn from, about, and with Indigenous peoples. It is adding the culture, the languages to it and in our schools. It is about decolonizing our mindsets and enacting education for reconciliation, so all students, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, can learn and create a better tomorrow. And then for education for reconciliation, this is about Canadian students, or even all Canadians for that matter. It's about learning about Canada's true history. It is a framework that challenges the Canada many of us grew up with. It questions the prior justification of cultural genocide meant to destroy indigeneity taught in institutions. The framework provides an inward exploration of our institutions, practices, and policies. Historically, schools have not been a safe place for Indigenous people. Education for reconciliation should be synonymous with the concept of safety. If we want true reconciliation to occur and to repair our relationships with Indigenous people, all people need to be culturally safe in all forms of education. So next, we're going to introduce you to the artists that are part of the Your Voices Power program. So on the next slide, the Your Voices Power program highlights 3 nationally recognized Indigenous artists. These are the artists who are taking part in this year's competition. Students will remix songs from Dakota Bear, Jaylee Wolf, and Simeon, while taking inspiration from the social justice themes demonstrated in each of the original songs. One of our favorite parts of the program is that students can get to hear directly from each of the artists about their inspiration and journey into the world. So Simeon is a French-speaking Indigenous hip-hop artist originally from Picklegon, a small Indigenous community in Quebec. He was discovered in 2004 thanks to the Wapakani Mobile Project and has since released 3 albums, one of which, Face à la Musique, won a Felix Award at the ADISQ Music Awards for Hip Hop Album of the Year. He has performed throughout Canada and in more than 10 countries worldwide. He has also published a poetry collection gathering the text of his 3 albums. In addition, several of his texts are now found in different textbooks in Quebec. Simeon performs his songs in French and in the Algonquin language. Next, we have Jaylee Wolf. Jaylee is an Anishinaabe Cree artist, songwriter, actor, and filmmaker based out of Toronto, Canada. She works to be a role model in her community, speaking to Indigenous youth about the entertainment industry, mental health, and empowering them to follow their dreams. Jaylee began her music career writing, producing with her partner and collaborator Hayden Wolf as Once a Tree. Their debut releases and self-directed music videos resulted in features in Rolling Stones, People, MTV, Billboard, and Nylon. The critical acclaim culminated in the duo being featured in the Juno Awards docuseries Rising. Jaylee now begins her journey to explore her past, present, and future as an individual artist as she tells the tales of the hardships her family endured as a result of the colonial genocide inflicted by the Canadian government and her exit from the doomsday cult she was born into, and releasing that shame and guilt instilled in her concerning her LGBTQ identity. And last but not least, we have Dakota Bear. Dakota is a Saskatoon-bred, Vancouver-based Indigenous hip-hop artist and activist. His passion for social justice and music are a powerful blend, using his platforms to create changes and spread positive messages. His messages have been shared far and wide in different media publications and blogging websites. His online videos have amassed over 1 million views collectively. He's best known for his quality and meaningful music videos, empowering and informative vlogs, and his music. Music has brought Dakota across Turtle Island and universities, social justice rallies, hip-hop award shows, and more. His message has been consistent. His quest for love, justice, and peace is unwavering, while his sound is unique and melodic. So now, we're going to listen to Dakota Bear's song, Freedom. I encourage you to listen to the lyrics and the messages behind them, as we're going to do an activity with them shortly.
I'm doing this work as we can't just pray anymore. We must do something, and we need to do it now. I need to get right into this message so you feel where I'm coming from.
The people are standing together, there's power in numbers. We will not fall where you want us. We learning the laws you throwing upon us. You throw us in water, we notice piranhas. The people they needing a leader, just know that I'm on it. I'm honest in everything that I do. Every word that I write is true. The people that get it, they know that the picture is bigger. So pull up a seat and you listen. You put in your fist in the air. You know the resistance is here. You'll hear us off in a distance. We are the kids that you dismissed. We are the targets you just missed. We are descendants of healers and chiefs. Just know that our struggles are brief. Just know that we one and the same. I'm from the prairies, the plains. I'll go my hair out until I can braid it again. I'm no longer ashamed. I promised our people our hardships will not go in vain. You're hearing my voice and the melody carry the pain. I do not do this for money or fame. I just wanna be me. I just wanna feel free. Is that too much that we ask? Look to the future but learn from the past. I know that sometimes we clash, and it's just life. Chances ain't handed out twice. A man of my word and a man of advice. I just wanna feel free. We just wanna live our lives. We don't wanna have to worry. Tell me, can you help me? It don't seem like you've been in a hurry. You playing judge and jury. I feel I'm under siege. Get the matches, burn the sage. Chapters over, turn the page. Author of my destiny, but they telling me differently. We just wanna live our lives. We don't wanna have to worry. Tell me, can you help me? It don't seem like you've been in a hurry. I just wanna be me. I just wanna feel free. I swear we've been doing the most. I pack my suitcase and move to the coast. I promise the next time I come to the city, I'm bringing hope. I'm bringing you, and it's bigger than music. Together we started a movement. Together we stand, we shaking the earth as we moving. As soon as you look for the answer, you see the solution. Our minds are as clear as the water as soon as you see the pollution. We want the freedom and not the illusion. We are the warriors, the ones that you're reading the stories. We are notorious. I just wanna be me. I just wanna feel free. We just wanna live our lives. We don't wanna have to worry. Tell me, can you help me? It don't seem like you've been in a hurry. You playing judge and jury. I feel I'm under siege. Get the matches, burn the sage. Chapters over, turn the page. Author of my destiny, but they telling me differently. We just wanna live our lives. We don't wanna have to worry. Tell me, can you help me? It don't seem like you've been in a hurry. I just wanna be me. I just wanna feel free.
When I say protect our, you say planet. Protect our planet. Protect our planet. When I say water is, you say life. Water is life. Water is life.
My name is Dakota Bear and my spirit name is Blue Thunder. I'm from unceded, unsurrendered lands of Treaty 6, and we are now situated on the unceded and unsurrendered lands of the Coast Salish peoples.
Okay, so we just witnessed a really powerful song by Dakota Bear. And one of the ways that the Your Voices Power program implements the methods of indigenization, decolonization, and education for reconciliation is through the 4R framework. So I'm going to take you through and explain this framework, and then I'm going to ask you how Dakota Bear's song fits each element of the 4 Rs. So the 4R framework was created by Indigenous educators Verna J. Kirkness and Ray Barnhart, who spent their lives advocating for Indigenous education. And they believed that education should contain the 4 R's, and that is respect, relevance, reciprocity, and responsibility. And so thinking about analyzing songs through this lens, or even creating songs that include these elements, we can ask ourselves, how can the songs we create embody respect, relevance, reciprocity, and responsibility? So a little bit more in detail, the 4R framework was aimed at decolonizing and indigenizing the education system. And so to use this framework to analyze Dakota Bear's song, we can talk about respect. And so respect is to honor all of creation, and respect addresses the dignity of people, encompasses the honoring and valuing of who everyone is as a unique person. And inherent in the overarching principle of respect is the honoring of gifts, honoring of rights, autonomy, choice, worthiness, uniqueness, and self-determination. So respect is not just reserved for those with high status in society, or like a high income level, intellect, power, or attractiveness. Respect is deserved by all of creation. And so I would like to ask you, how does Dakota Bear implement respect into the song that you just listened to? And if you're a teacher watching this pre-recorded session, feel free to pause the video and discuss with your group. And I'll see what type of responses come in here. Okay, and we had someone say respect for the water. And so at the beginning of the video, you actually heard water activist speaking about protecting the sacred and protecting the water. So not only is respect reserved for humans, but also water and the earth and things like that as well. I also see here a response by Abby, to be free. So respecting people's right to self-determination and respecting people's right to live free and to have like human rights and things like that. Absolutely. Grace said the Idle No More t-shirt was shown throughout. So respecting the earth again. Nicholas said the song represents respect because he's talking about history, freedoms, and rights of Indigenous peoples. And Samuel said the same thing, right? That belief about freedom. Awesome. So moving on then is relevance. And so to be relevant towards Indigenous perspectives could mean including Indigenous perspectives regarding history and culture to ensure Indigenous knowledges continue to be passed down through generations. Respecting Indigenous history, culture, knowledge, and perspectives can include becoming informed about these topics by doing your research and actively seeking out Indigenous perspectives. It could also include using Indigenous place names and learning about the history of the land that you occupy. And so how did Dakota Bear include relevant Indigenous perspectives in his song? And again, I'll give you a few moments to type in your answers. So again, lots of people talking about the right to be free. So this is a relevant topic that Indigenous people care about and are talking about. So definitely. Hector says he included a lot of Indigenous supporters. So just even by having Indigenous people in his video and showcasing the community, that is definitely a relevant Indigenous perspective. Grace again said he made a song showing Indigenous people and telling them about their history and explaining it through his lyrics. Absolutely. Sophia says he talked about trauma and how Indigenous people, want to talk about that. And sometimes that can be a way, a coping method is to, use art to talk about trauma. Awesome. Okay, seeing lots of really great responses. The next R is reciprocity. And so this one is all about fostering reciprocal relationships. And so reciprocity is based on the teaching of interconnectedness. Whenever we take something from the earth, we also make sure to give it back. Often this is in the form of prayer or some sort of offering. And when we work with others, we need to ensure the relationship is beneficial to both so that everyone feels valued and appreciated. So fostering reciprocal relationships can look like showing up on time, you're valuing somebody else's time, returning a favor if somebody helps you making sure that you help them too. And so how does Dakota Bear implement the philosophy of reciprocity into his song? And this one might be a little bit more tricky, but I have had students in the past be able to identify this right away. So we'll see if anyone gets it. Okay, yeah, Calvin said even showcasing some of the protests that he organized. So giving back in that way to the community by organizing a protest or a demonstration, showing that he cares, definitely shows reciprocity. Yeah, saying water is life. So Sophia said, even just by saying water is life, we're showing care for the water that sustains us. Awesome. The one that you might not have picked up on is, did anybody see Dakota Bear creating tobacco ties? And so that was when he was holding like a red cloth. In my culture as Anishinaabe people, whenever we are saying a prayer or giving an offering, we give tobacco in a red cloth. And it said that the tobacco, when we burn it, will send our prayers up to the Creator. Okay, and the last one is responsibility. And so this is using your voice in a responsible way. So the things that we say and do can have a huge impact on others. And we need to ensure that we're using our voice in a responsible way. So responsibility is more than just an idea, it is an action. And sometimes using our voice in a responsible way can look like advocating for change. And so how did Dakota Bear advocate for change or use his voice in a responsible way in the video? Awesome. Ari said standing up for the water and plants. So, using your voice to talk for things that can't speak out for themselves, such as the water and the plants. Yeah, and Calvin said just the fact that he is making a song to amplify Indigenous people's cries for help. Absolutely. Yeah, and he showed responsibility by taking a stand for his community. Awesome. Okay, so throughout the Your Voices Power program, one of the challenges is for you to create your own lyrics over a beat that you code. And so when you do this, if you decide to engage in the program, you'll be asked to think about how you can demonstrate respect, relevance, reciprocity, and responsibility through your song lyrics. So using your voice in a powerful way. Okay, so next I'm going to talk about the competition requirements. So like I explained, all of the 8 modules are located on the website at www.yourvoicespower.ca. And teachers are definitely encouraged to implement this in their own learning spaces. But what's really exciting is that students can do this as a self-directed lesson or a series of lessons themselves as well. And so once you engage in the full curriculum, we just took bits and pieces today to show you a glimpse as to what that could look like. The final part is the competition. And so after you code your song and make sure that your song includes the 4 R's as well as one of the 94 calls to action, this is the rubric. And so the first part that you'll be judged on is your beat. And so ensuring that your song is a minimum of 30 seconds and a maximum of 3 minutes, ensuring that your song has at least 5 unique musical tracks. And one of the sound clips in your song, it could be the drums, it could be the melody from one Indigenous artist. So it could be from Dakota Bear. You could use a part of the song Freedom. Maybe you really liked the drums in Freedom. You can include that in your song. Or it could be a part of the song from J. Lee Wolf or Samion. It just has to include one part from those Indigenous artist partners. And then is your song a remix? So does it sound, how is the beat? Does it actually sound put together like it could be a real song? The next category on my next slide here is the coding aspect. So does your code include the EarSketch API function, fit media? Does your song use variables? Does your song include custom user-defined functions to define the song sections? Do you use the comments? So the comments are where you're able to talk about the different elements of your song and how they maybe advocate for change or how they use the 4 R's. So the comments don't actually affect the song themselves, but it just tells the judges why you were careful to include different things and why you were intentional about including various elements in your song. And then finally is promoting equity. So of course, does your song include a strong message or a call to action that promotes equity? Does your song demonstrate awareness and analysis of racial injustice? And did you write a short reflection of how your song accomplishes all of these goals? So I will also talk a little bit about copyright because sometimes this is a question that students and teachers have. But all of the song samples in the EarSketch program are licensed. And so you can use them in your remix as you wish. The artists have given their blessing for them to be remixed. So copyright protects the creator of a piece of original work to have the exclusive rights to reproduce and use that work. And so if you're using any sounds outside of the EarSketch library, because you are able to implement other sounds from your computer into the program, you just need to make sure that it is copyrighted or like you have permission to do so. And you can also include your own instruments and vocals, but you can't upload like samples or covers of songs or anything like that. So if you go to my next slide, please. Excitingly, these are the competition prizes. So 2 students in Canada will win $5,000. And this can go towards your university, college, or to start a business when you graduate. The runners-up will win $200 Amazon gift cards and a $25 gift card for an honorable mention. Also, teachers are in on the prizes as well, and one excellent teacher will receive $1,000 for their remarkable instruction engaging in this program. So how would everybody like to hear the winner from last year? All right, so we have Bryce Watt. Bryce Watt is was a grade 12 student at Tech Block High School here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And he actually recorded his own lyrics to his song. So not only did he create the beat, he coded the beat himself, but he also rapped his own lyrics over his song. And he says, my inspiration came from feeling like racism and injustice affected my life. And so this song is all about that topic and his personal experience with it, which is pretty powerful. So we'll go ahead and give it a listen.
Product of the trenches, steady fight against depression. Violence often mentioned. Forgetting broken construction. Nobody ever listens. Here's the look, but can never get it. We have little vision. Traumatized alcoholics mixed with addiction. Domestic brutality in the family home. Murmuring deceit in the family home. Blood on the wall in the family home. Mix of alcohol in the family home. Questions confront the conscience. Is this a family home? Currently, we develop. We want a family.
All right. Since we have a little bit of time, should we also play the next song, which is Mayuki Dreyer's song? It's on the same, it's on the same webpage here. So this was the other winner, and she was based in Toronto, Ontario.
Doing this work as we can't just pray anymore. Doing this work as we can't just pray anymore. Doing this work as we can't just pray anymore. We must do something, and we need to do it now.
Almost like you're screaming, but no one hears your voice.
We want the freedom and not the illusion. We are the warriors, the ones that you read in the stories. We are notorious.
Almost like you're screaming, but no one hears your voice.
I just wanna be me, I just wanna feel free. Is that too much that we ask? Look to the future but learn from the past. I know that sometimes we clash.
Almost like you're screaming, but no one hears your voice.
All right, so you can see that Mayuki didn't rap her own lyrics or sing her own lyrics, but she combined some elements from Dakota Bear's song. She also included water activist Autumn Peltier at the beginning of her song, and then a couple of other remixes as well. So I should mention that in terms of winners, so there's 2 winners selected, one Indigenous winner and then one non-Indigenous winner. And if anybody has any questions, I think we can spend some time answering any and all of the questions that you have. And so I see a couple here in the chat already. Someone asked, can I partner up with someone to make a song? Absolutely. So you can work in groups. You don't have to do this all by yourself. Although both like Bryce and Mayuki decided to do it themselves, you can definitely submit as a group. What other questions? Yeah, 2 people are definitely allowed. Okay, so how many people can partner up? I mean, I would say like groups of 3 or 4 is probably the maximum. I don't think we directly stated what the maximum is, but I think, you know, ensuring that everybody plays a part is really important. And so I would say 3 to 4 is probably the maximum. The deadline is in the springtime. So I believe it's May 31st, 2023. So you definitely have a lot of time to go through each of the 8 modules. Each module takes about an hour and a half to complete, but there's lots of extension activities. So if you want to dive deeper into something, for example, module 2 is all about the history of hip hop. And so if you want to, dive into how was hip hop created, who created it, maybe you want to spend some more time learning about that, you definitely can. But you have until spring to submit your song. You can find more information on the website at www.yourvoiceispower.ca. The rubric criteria is all on the website. So I see lots of people asking about the rubric. That is definitely on the website. And I think it's in module 8. So once you get to the end, then we show you the rubric and all of the criteria to complete your song. Okay. And so the winner is chosen by the end of the school year. So by the end of June, like mid to late June, is when the winner will be announced. So we will contact your school and get in touch with you that way. All right, so I hear lots of excitement in the chat. We definitely want as many submissions as possible. And even if you don't think you're going to win, like I'm sure Bryce was thinking that as well, and Mayuki, but you have a better chance than you think. So definitely try to submit. And we have one final wrap-up question for everyone, and Rika will take us through that one.
So I kind of asked this question earlier in our little co-taught lesson, but thinking about everything that we talked about today, and then when you're going through the modules, how are music, computer science, activism, and entrepreneurship pathways to promote racial equity? You can answer in the chat if you'd like, see if you can have like a little answer right now. How do these all go together? Like, how do they mesh together? Did we teach you a little bit today about how they go together? Nicholas said we can inspire our songs from our favorite rappers. I love that, yes. Just like how we all got inspiration today from Dakota Bear. And teachers, if you're watching this pre-recorded, you can pause the video and ask this question to your classroom. And this question isn't meant to be like one final answer to be answered even today. This is an ongoing question that you'll be going through if you're doing the whole program, all the modules, something you might even think about for next couple of years. Like, what does activism, entrepreneurship have to do with music? How do these all promote racial equity? How do these help foster truth and reconciliation in our communities? So if we have no more questions, I think we could probably wrap up.
Yeah, I see Sophia said these platforms can give us information about injustice, definitely. And I see a lot of questions coming in.
About how to submit a song.
Yeah, so I encourage everyone to go to the website, www.yourvoicespower.ca, and you'll see all the information there. You can submit a song right through the website. So there's a big submit your song button once you get through the 8 modules. And the song has to be a minimum of 30 seconds and a maximum of 3 minutes.
Oh, Hector said you can use what you know to promote it. Promote racial equity.
Totally. All right, well, it's looking like we are finishing a little bit early. I'm not sure if Emily, you want to jump on and give us an outro here. But thank you so much, everyone, for participating. And we really look forward to hearing your submissions come competition time.
Thank you, everyone. Miigwech.
Thank you both so much for sharing all that knowledge, all that learning, and so much great information about the Your Voice is Power competition, whether we enter it as a competition or we just follow along and learn in those modules as well. Students and teachers, this is your chance to reconnect with each other and figure out what your next steps are. Remember to head over to yourvoiceispower.ca for all the details and all the fine print of this incredible opportunity for you and your classroom. Wonderful. Thank you, everyone. We're going to sign off and say goodbye.